What if kindness were the only currency that truly mattered? On a cold November evening in downtown Chicago, 34-year-old waitress Melody wiped down the last table at Rosie's diner, her feet aching after another 12-hour shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she counted her tips, barely enough to cover her daughter's medicine this month. Outside, the wind howled through empty streets, and she noticed a figure huddled near the dumpster behind the restaurant. Most people would have locked the door and walked away, but something in Melody's heart wouldn't let her ignore the shivering stranger. She had no idea that this moment of compassion would change her life forever, or that the homeless man wasn't who he appeared to be. Sometimes the universe tests us in ways we never expect, disguising our greatest blessings as our most challenging moments. Where are you watching from tonight? Melody had always believed that everyone deserved dignity, a lesson learned from her late grandmother, who used to say, "Honey, you never know what battles people are fighting." Working double shifts at Rosie's diner wasn't glamorous, but it kept a roof over her and 8-year-old Sophia's heads. Her daughter had been born with a rare heart condition that required expensive medication, and insurance only covered so much. Every tip mattered, every smile she gave to customers was genuine because she understood struggle. The diner sat on the edge of Chicago's financial district, where wealthy businesspeople grabbed quick lunches between meetings. Melody had served CEOs who barely looked up from their phones and hedge fund managers who complained about everything. She treated them all with the same warmth she'd give her own family, though some days their coldness stung more than others. Her manager, Frank, was a good man who let her take leftover food home and never complained when she had to leave early for Sophia's doctor appointments. That particular evening had been especially rough. A group of young executives had left a mess on purpose, laughing as they walked out without tipping. Her car had broken down that morning, forcing her to take 2 buses to work in the freezing rain. When her ex-husband called demanding she lower his child support payments again, claiming his new girlfriend needed expensive things, Melody felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. But as she prepared to leave through the back exit, something made her pause. The figure by the dumpster wasn't moving much, and she could see his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. He wore a tattered coat that had seen better years, and his shoes had holes that let in the bitter Chicago wind. Most of the homeless people in the area knew her by name. She often shared her employees' meal or brought extra soup from home. This man was different, though, someone she hadn't seen before. "Excuse me," she called softly, approaching with caution but not fear. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, and she was surprised by his eyes, alert and intelligent, despite his disheveled appearance. He appeared to be in his early 40s, with stubble covering a face that might have been handsome under different circumstances. "Just trying to stay warm, miss. Don't mind me." His voice was educated, refined in a way that didn't match his appearance. Something tugged at her heart as she noticed his hands shaking. Whether from cold or hunger, she couldn't tell. "When's the last time you ate something hot?" she asked, already knowing she couldn't walk away. "Been a while," he admitted quietly, looking embarrassed. "But I don't want to trouble anyone." Melody glanced back at the diner, then at her watch. Frank had already left, trusting her to lock up. She had bus fare home and exactly $17 in tips from the entire day. Her daughter was spending the night at her best friend's house, which meant Melody could afford to be a few minutes late. What she did next would set in motion a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. "Wait here," Melody said, disappearing back into the diner. The man watched through the window as she moved around the kitchen, heating up leftover meatloaf and mashed potatoes from the dinner rush. She wrapped fresh bread in a napkin and poured coffee into a large to-go cup, adding extra sugar packets. When she emerged, she carried a full meal and a small bag with additional food. "This should help," she said, handing him the warm containers. "I'm Melody, by the way." "James," he replied, accepting the food with genuine gratitude. "This is incredibly kind of you." As James ate, they talked quietly in the alley. He told her he'd lost his job recently and was staying in a shelter downtown, though he'd been turned away tonight because they were full. Melody found herself sharing too, about Sophia's condition, the struggle to make ends meet, and how her grandmother had taught her to see the good in everyone. There was something about this stranger that felt safe, familiar even. Your daughter is lucky to have someone like you, James said after she mentioned working double shifts to afford Sophia's medication. Not everyone would stop to help a stranger, especially when they're facing their own challenges. We're all just people trying to get by, Melody replied. Besides, kindness doesn't cost anything, and it's often the only thing that keeps us going. James studied her face in the dim light from the diner's sign. Most people he encountered in his real life were motivated by what they could gain from him. Here was someone who had almost nothing, sharing what little she had with a complete stranger. No cameras, no recognition, no benefit to herself whatsoever. Melody, he said carefully, what if I told you that sometimes people aren't who they appear to be? She tilted her head, unsure what he meant. I suppose we all have stories that don't show on the surface. Before James could respond, 3 young men in expensive suits turned into the alley, apparently taking a shortcut from the nearby bar district. They were loud, clearly intoxicated, and when they spotted James and Melody, their conversation took an ugly turn. Look at this, one of them sneered. Feeding the strays now? That's just going to make more of them show up. Please just keep walking, Melody said firmly, stepping slightly in front of James. You know, lady, you're part of the problem, another chimed in. These people need to get jobs instead of looking for handouts. James stood slowly, something shifting in his demeanor. For a moment, Melody saw a flash of something in his eyes. Not fear or submission, but controlled anger. That's enough, he said quietly, his voice carrying unexpected authority. The men laughed, but something in James's tone made them hesitate. When one of them moved closer, clearly intending to intimidate, James stepped forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Just when it seemed the situation couldn't get worse, James pulled out something that made all 3 men step back in shock, their faces draining of color as they recognized what they were seeing. The business card James produced wasn't ordinary. It was heavy stock with elegant lettering that read, Executive Capital Holdings, with a name that made the 3 drunken men sober up instantly. Their aggressive postures crumbled as they realized they were face to face with someone they'd only seen in financial magazines and business news reports. Mr. Patterson, one of them stammered, his voice barely a whisper. We had no idea. James Patterson, one of Chicago's most influential investment moguls, stood in the alley wearing torn clothes and holding a container of leftover meatloaf. The men who had been threatening him moments before now looked terrified, knowing their careers could end with a single phone call. But James's attention wasn't on them. It was on Melody, who stood frozen in confusion. Leave. Now, James commanded, his voice carrying the weight of billions in assets. The men fled without another word, stumbling over themselves to escape the alley. Melody stared at the business card, then at James, her mind racing to process what had just happened. I don't understand, she whispered. You're really... I'm sorry for the deception, James said softly, removing his tattered coat to reveal an expensive shirt underneath. I needed to know something, and this was the only way to find out. Know what? Melody asked, hurt and confusion evident in her voice. She felt foolish now, remembering how she'd shared her struggles with someone who could probably buy the entire city block. Whether genuine kindness still exists, James replied, sitting back down on the concrete steps. My wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. Before she passed, she made me promise something, that I wouldn't let grief and wealth isolate me from real human connection. She said I was in danger of forgetting what good people looked like. His voice cracked slightly as he continued. I've been testing this theory for months, visiting different neighborhoods, different situations. Do you know how many people have walked past me tonight? 47. You're the only one who stopped. Melody sat down beside him, still processing everything. So this was all a game to you? My kindness was just an experiment. No, James said firmly. Your kindness was real, which is exactly what I was hoping to find. I've built an empire, but I lost myself somewhere along the way. Tonight, talking with you, sharing your story about Sophia, it reminded me why my wife fell in love with me in the first place. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of a beautiful woman with kind eyes. Elizabeth started a foundation before she died, designed to help families with children who have medical needs. It's been sitting dormant because I couldn't find the right person to run it. Someone who understands what these families go through. Melody looked at the photo, then back at James. What are you saying? I'm saying your daughter isn't the only child who needs help, and you're not the only parent struggling to provide it. What if we could change that together? Have you ever faced something like this, a moment when your whole world shifted unexpectedly? Let us know in the comments. As Melody tried to process this life-changing offer, she had no idea that the decision she was about to make would affect thousands of families just like hers. I don't know anything about running a foundation, Melody said, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what James was suggesting. I'm just a waitress trying to keep my daughter healthy. That's exactly why you're perfect for this, James replied, his eyes brightening with conviction. You understand the fear of watching your child suffer while feeling powerless to help. You know what it's like to choose between medicine and groceries, to work multiple jobs and still fall short. He stood and helped her to her feet, brushing dust off her uniform. Elizabeth's foundation has $20 million waiting to help families, but it needs someone with heart to guide it. Someone who won't just see numbers on applications, but real people with real struggles. Melody felt tears welling up as the reality hit her. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every parent she'd met in hospital waiting rooms, every family she'd seen struggling with medical bills they couldn't afford. What would this mean for Sophia? It means she gets the best medical care available, James said gently. But more than that, it means other children get help too. We could create programs for transportation to medical appointments, temporary housing for families during treatment, emergency financial assistance when insurance falls short. The alley suddenly felt charged with possibility. Melody thought about the countless nights she'd lain awake worrying about next month's medication costs, the anxiety attacks when Sophia's symptoms flared up, the isolation of facing it all alone. I'd want to start with a pilot program, she said, her voice growing stronger. Something small, maybe 10 families initially, so we can learn what works and what doesn't. James smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all evening. Elizabeth would have loved you. She always said the best ideas come from people who've lived the problems they're trying to solve. But why the test tonight? Melody asked. Why the deception? Because I needed to know your character wasn't performance, James explained. Wealthy people are surrounded by those who act kind for personal gain. I needed to see who you really are when you think no one important is watching. He handed her another business card, this one with her name already printed on it, Melody Chen, Executive Director, Elizabeth Patterson Foundation. Her hands trembled as she read it. You already decided, she whispered. I decided the moment you came back outside with that meal, James said. Everything after that just confirmed what I already knew. You have the heart Elizabeth wanted this foundation to have. As they walked toward the street together, Melody's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia's friend's mother. Sophia's having chest pains. We're heading to the emergency room. Panic flooded through Melody as she realized she had no car, no quick way to get to the hospital. James immediately understood the situation without explanation and was already calling his driver. We'll be there in 10 minutes, he assured her as a black sedan pulled up to the curb. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. As they rushed toward the hospital, neither Melody nor James realized that this crisis would become the foundation's first case, and the beginning of something even more meaningful than either of them had imagined. The emergency room visit turned out to be anxiety rather than a heart episode. Sophia had been worried about her mother working so late and had worked herself into a panic attack. As James sat in the waiting room, watching Melody comfort her daughter with infinite patience and love, he knew with absolute certainty that his wife had somehow guided him to the right person. 3 months later, the Elizabeth Patterson Foundation had helped 37 families navigate medical crises. Melody had proven to be exactly what James had hoped, compassionate but practical, empathetic but organized. She'd created support groups for parents, established partnerships with local hospitals, and developed a network of volunteers who had been in similar situations themselves. "Mom, Mr. Patterson's here," Sophia announced as she opened the apartment door. She was healthier now, with access to better specialists and medications, but more importantly, she was happier because her mother was no longer consumed with worry about money. James entered carrying takeout from Rosie's diner, their weekly tradition. Frank had been so proud when Melody told him about her new position that he'd insisted on catering their first board meeting for free. "How did the Martinez family visit go?" James asked, settling into what had become his usual chair at their small kitchen table. "Beautiful," Melody smiled, pulling out photos on her phone. Their son had his surgery last week, and today he took his first steps without a walker. The whole family was crying happy tears. James studied the photos, remembering his wife's words about how helping others heal could heal your own heart too. Working with Melody had brought him back to himself in ways he hadn't expected. Her friendship had become precious to him, not romantic, but deeply meaningful in the way that shared purpose creates unbreakable bonds. "Elizabeth would be so proud," he said softly, looking at the foundation's impact report spread across the table. "We've helped over 200 families already." "She'd be proud of you too," Melody replied, understanding the weight of grief he still carried. "For keeping your promise to her, for not letting money isolate you from people who matter." Sophia emerged from her room with a drawing she'd made, a picture of all the children the foundation had helped, holding hands around a heart with her mom and James in the center. "This is for the office," she announced. "So everyone knows we're all family now." As James hung the drawing on their refrigerator, he reflected on that cold November night that had changed everything. He'd been searching for authentic kindness and had found something even more valuable, a purpose that honored his wife's memory while creating his own legacy of compassion. The foundation continued to grow, but its heart remained the same. The understanding that everyone deserves dignity, that kindness costs nothing but means everything, and that sometimes our greatest tests come disguised as ordinary moments of choice. Melody often told the families they helped that story about the night in the alley, reminding them that help can come from unexpected places when we least expect it, but that it often starts with our willingness to help others first. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of compassion and second chances.